If you've been around YouTube for more than a decade, you're probably familiar with the Draw My Life trend. It was pretty popular when I was a kid, and I've wanted to make videos since then, so I figured might as well start now. I was born on September 25th, 2002, raised in the concrete jungle, the home of hustle and bustle, the Empire State, the Big Apple, New York City. As for my background, I'm a first-generation Latino American. My family hails from a pair of islands in the Caribbean known for their music, tropical climates, food, dance, and beautiful women. I'm Dominican and Puerto Rican, and I've heard from various sources that there isn't a better mix. The handsome fellow that you see there in the middle is me. And as for my parents, my dad was a rapper, reggaeton artist, and certified hustler. As for my mom, she didn't really work because dad was doing well. Like most black and Latino kids growing up in New York City, I was raised in the projects, which isn't necessarily the best place to be raised, but my family certainly did what they could with what they had, where they were. And they did a pretty good job at protecting me from the cruel environment. I was a very chill kid, kinda just played with toys or my Xbox 360 all the time, which was the coolest thing ever. I didn't really get into much trouble, and I certainly didn't get into fights. Not a single one. To this day, at 23 years of age, I have yet to get into a fight. I was also pretty smart for my age, as I was placed in the Gifted and Talented program from 3rd to 5th grade. Though I was and still am absolutely terrible at math, I happen to be really good at reading and writing. I mean, I literally used to open up dictionaries or thesauruses and try to add the largest words I could to my lexicon, despite my young age. And I think it's partly due to the fact that I had no cable growing up. I only had cable in the living room, so when I'd come home after school and try to watch cartoons, my grandmother would often just send me to the room so that she could watch her novelas and noticias and catch up on the latest episode of Caso Cerrado, which meant I was often left alone watching PBS Kids. And if you know anything about ball, then I was fascinated with Word Girl, Super Y, Martha Speaks, and several other educational shows. Despite my fascination with grammar, I was by no stretch a nerd. Well, maybe I was. I did like anime at a very early age. At least I was an athletic nerd. Came from a family of athletes, so I was no stranger to sports, but I didn't really get into them until I was a little bit older. So my first sport was karate, and I did it for about 2 years, making it all the way to blue belt. But then I kinda just stopped after a while, until I started playing basketball at my local community center when I was about 9 years old. And it turns out I was quite the natural. I was actually a child prodigy. And for 5 years I played in AAU circuits, leagues, and tournaments all across the city. I was no stranger to success or spotlight when it came to the hardwood. I had genuine hoop dreams, and you couldn't tell me that I wasn't going to be an NBA player, because that's exactly what I was going to be. There wasn't a shadow of a doubt in my mind, regardless of how tall I was. But I soon came to realize that those dreams would be cut short when I got to high school. I was the best player on most of the teams that I played for, and was quite used to dominating, despite usually being the shortest one on the court. But my dad is 6'1", and I happen to be a late bloomer, so I spent years patiently waiting for a growth spurt that never came. I was 5'3" when I tried out for the team and immediately got cut on the first stage of tryouts. And when I went to ask the coach for some constructive criticism, he simply said I was too short. As I mentioned earlier, I was all in on the basketball thing, so there wasn't a realistic plan or a plan B for lack of better terms. I hadn't considered what I was going to be, and despite being considerably intelligent, I didn't get good grades because I hated doing homework, and I certainly didn't think about college or what kind of job I'd want to have. I was a lot more concerned with running up 2K with the boys and cracking jokes in class all day. So when the time to fill out applications came around, I obviously had no clue. I decided to study communications so that I could at least be a sports commentator. But my grades weren't that great, and I couldn't get into the school that I wanted, so I settled with criminal justice. And I was still on the fence about college, but, I followed the blueprint that they laid out for us and decided to give it a shot until COVID happened. And yeah, it was a real unfortunate time for everyone, but it was especially unfortunate for the graduating class of 2020. We had no graduation, no prom, and we were sort of the guinea pigs, getting to experience the early implementation or prototypes of Zoom and what would come from it, you know? I truly didn't realize what was happening at the time that it was happening, but all I know is that it left an extremely salty taste in my mouth. Obviously, as a result of that, when it was time to actually do college, there was no other choice but online school. And given what just happened and how my seamless transition into adulthood was robbed of me, there's absolutely zero chance I was gonna do school for an entire year online. So I dropped out, and my family tried to convince me otherwise on multiple occasions, and perhaps enticed other family members to attempt as well, but no. I did have a job, so I wasn't wasting my life and doing nothing at all. I did get the job in high school, so I can now focus on working full-time hours at Foot Locker. And despite getting a part-time paycheck, I certainly worked full-time hours. And as a result of my time spent at Foot Locker, I naturally started to make friends. And with my first bit of adult freedom, I started to go out, which eventually introduced me to parties, alcohol, and marijuana, which are things that I was entirely opposed to in high school and had lots of negative connotations around, but I liked a girl. And so I kind of got peer pressured, but I won't shift the blame on her because I wasn't being held gunpoint. I made these decisions of my own free will. And just as quick as I began to embrace a new sort of lifestyle and new habits, I became a hedonist. I became a teenage pothead, having a book bag that reeked of loud everywhere I went, and always having a restock or a refill. And I went to a lot of parties, as that was the only thing on my mind that would sort of satisfy the hole that was present in my chest that I was entirely unaware of. I had no ambition, no direction, no goals, but at least I had fun. At least that's what I thought. As with most things, you can only run from it for so long, so eventually I hit a low point. I hit rock bottom. And it happened to culminate and reach its peak on Thanksgiving of all days. I got into a severe argument with my family, and it ended up devastating me. I was left in pieces and struggling to find myself. If I'm being entirely honest here, I had very little will to even live, and I had quite unpleasant thoughts about myself. But just as soon as I reached this low point, I noticed a shift. The algorithm, my phone, I started to come across self-improvement, red pill, black pill, manosphere type of content, which is something entirely foreign up until that point, but it came at a time most needed. I finally had achieved a sense of ambition. There was something that I was aspiring every single day to accomplish, and that was being a better version of myself. And this was different from the previous dream because this couldn't get crushed. It wouldn't bring me back to reality. In fact, I can stay delusional in my pursuit of being better. And that is precisely what I did. I went down a rabbit hole of self-improvement, educating myself on philosophy, stoicism, psychology, and many other things. I never really read much books, but suddenly books were cool because I realized I had the freedom in choosing whatever I wanted to read. And within a matter of about 2 months, I went from wanting to damn near kill myself to wanting to do nothing except but to live. And loving every moment that I got to breathe and to live because it was another opportunity to get better. And the people around me started to notice the changes and the differences. I was now a confident person, and I was certainly receiving feedback from my contemporaries and peers and coworkers, especially the females in the workplace. I had even begun to upload my own motivational content, and as I mentioned before, I was entirely unrecognizable. The spiritual journey that I was on for a couple of months ultimately led me to searching for truth. And I happened to stumble across the truth when a longtime friend of mine from high school named Mo encouraged me to try Ramadan for a day. And initially I was opposed, but I decided to fast, just for a day anyway. So the night before, I opened up the Quran out of curiosity, no presuppositions or preconceived notions. I was simply curious, and I figured out that that book couldn't possibly come from a man. And coincidentally enough, I decided I'd fast for the entire month of Ramadan and take Shahada just by opening up the Quran for the first time. And eventually, a month later, give or take, I took Shahada on May 6, 2023, marking the best day of my life. But not only the best day of my life, I'd say the beginning of my life. That was 3 years ago. So there's clearly a lot of things that have happened since then, but those are stories for other times.